One of my very first experiences of the paranormal was during a normal school day. A friend and I were walking to a class together and we were a little late, so most students had already entered classrooms and weren't roaming around the school. We were just casually talking as we walked under a covered concrete pathway leading to the drama building. I honestly can't remember our conversation, especially when my listening was interrupted as I felt someone grab my arm as they charged past me. I was whipped around to the side by the force and immediately spun the rest of the way to give whoever did that a piece of my mind. However, no one was there and I looked further and I saw no one hunched down and walking at speeds. I asked my friend if she'd seen anything, but she responded negatively but did say she felt my abrupt turn as I was pulled. This happened around sometime in 2016, when I was a junior in high school. What do you believe happened? Was it an otherworldly force, an incredibly dedicated and fast student, or something else? Let us know down below. However, this is a judgment-free zone for anyone wishing to contribute and feel heard, so anyone abusing people's experiences in the comments will be removed. We want discussions, not abuse.
It was a common belief amongst my relatives that my nana's house was haunted. Now, I can't say I ever believed in that. After all, why would I? That was until I had my very own experience with whatever entity was entrapped within her dwelling. It was a completely still night in deep winter in Queensland, Australia, so no snow, just drop temperatures. I could hear absolutely no sounds in the night, which should have been my first clue considering my grandparents live on a farm. Yet there was no cicadas or croaking frogs, hell there wasn't even any creaking in the old house. Something wasn't right. I'd left my door open that night, wishing to fall asleep to the peaceful sounds of the fire crackling. When I'm woken seemingly for no reason, or at least none that I can remember now. I peered out my bedroom door, looking directly into the kitchen when I noticed a bright silverish white light. At first I presumed it was simply a reflection of the moon's light. However, it was no mere reflection at all. It appeared to be a glowing white orb that seemed to give off an icy mist, spreading its way outwards from the epicenter. I was absolutely terrified. My heart was pounding and I couldn't move. I just sat there with my heart in my throat and watched this glowing entity. I thought I was finally seeing the ghost all my family had alluded to. I sat there for what seemed like hours just watching as the smoky ice flowed off of the orb and up into the air. Next thing I know, I'm waking up the next morning and it was gone. What do you think the boy saw? Was it merely a reflection of the moon's light, or perhaps a ghostly visitor? Let us know in the comments, and as always, keep it a judgment-free zone.
One night when I was around 13, I was staying up late watching a show quietly on my iPad. When in a lull, I heard a sound coming from my closet. I tried to brush it off, thinking it was just something coming from my iPad. But I couldn't ignore that niggling feeling that something wasn't right. So, I turned my iPad off and just sat in the silence of the night, waiting. When it started going off again and I realized it was the voice of Buzz from Toy Story. See, years ago, when I was a child, I received a toy Buzz that spoke a few set phrases, depending on which button you pressed. However, that toy had been in my closet for years and not a sound. Honestly, the batteries should have been dead. And not one thing was pressing on any of the buttons. I started freaking out, as the set phrases started repeating quicker and quicker, the longer I sat there. The whole thing had a sinister feel to it, like I was being lured to open the closet. Something wanted me to open it, and it did not have good intentions. My heart was beating so fast and I could feel tears in the corner of my eyes. But it's when I saw a red light flare up between the gaps of the sliding doors that I finally managed to gain control of myself and I bolted. I ran to my mother in hysterics. Unfortunately, like most kids, I was not believed, just told I had an active imagination and that I was just dreaming. Suffice to say, the next morning I grabbed that toy and threw it into my parents' bedroom. If they didn't want to believe me, they could have it. What do you think it was? A teenage girl's overactive imagination? A long-forgotten toy desperately wanting to be picked up again? Or a malicious entity out to harm her? Let us know in the comments, and as always, keep it judgment-free. In early winter 2015, my childhood dog died. A beautiful black lab. It was one of the worst things I had ever experienced in the 13 years I had been alive at that point. Even now, 9 years later, I can still feel that ache in my heart. But I digress. Back to the story. Around a year after my beloved dog had passed and all signs of him having been with us faded away, I was having a terrible time. I'd lost my grandfather and was being severely bullied by my old friend group and some of the new. I was not in a good place, and on one dark and dreary day, when the heavens were pouring, I had to get something from my room. And being a stupid kid, who believed I was invincible, I was running in socks. Well, when I got to my bedroom, I slid and slammed into the floor, and one of my feet ended up pressed against the window. After taking a few minutes to orient myself and check for damages, I slowly got up, looking down to realize that somehow condensation covered my wooden floors around the entirety of the window, to about 2 or 3 feet back. And when I glanced down, there in the condensation was a paw print. Just the one. Perfectly preserved in the condensation, not at all disturbed by my tumble. It was like a sign. All I could do was stare while tears filled my eyes. It was like he was telling me that he would always be there for me, and that just because I couldn't see him anymore doesn't mean he wasn't there. What do you think it was? Was it the depressed mind of a teenage girl? Or was it a visit from an old furry friend? Let us know what you think in the comments, and keep it a judgment-free zone. A few times when walking the dog through the woods at night or exploring those very same woods during the day, I've happened to catch brief glimpses of something white, before it seems to duck behind a tree. And no matter how much I try to seek it out, it appears as if it was never there to begin with. No matter what angle around the tree it goes unseen. Almost as if the trees were portals, or the creature could just vanish amongst its beloved flora inhabiting its woods. And all this I could brush off as coincidence, or a trick of the light, or just my eyes playing tricks on me, but that was until the day I went exploring and had my friend on video call. It seemed like any normal time I explored in those woods. I even went on a different trail than I ever had before. And nothing happened. I was lulled into a false sense of security, but everything felt more sinister when my friend uttered the terrifying words. "I don't want to scare you." Immediately, I was on high alert, demanding what had happened. My heart was racing, and I could feel a cold shiver down my spine. I'd already been ignoring the feeling of being watched. I was just associating it with the animals amongst the trees. When the next damning words spewed forth from his mouth. "You're being followed. I can see something white following you, just peering out from amongst the trees." I immediately whipped around, but couldn't see anything, yet that horrible being watched feeling persisted. And suddenly everything felt malicious and eerie. I hate being followed and being watched. I sped up, leaving the woods as quickly as I could, thankfully managing to escape with no further encounters or any worse for wear than I entered in. What do you think it was? Was it a woodland spirit stalking this young woman? Or was it just her tired mind playing tricks on her? Let us know in the comments, and as always, keep it a judgment-free zone. It was a late summer's night. Thankfully with the darkness came the lowered humidity, and even a slight summer's breeze. My friend and I decided to go for a drive, wanting to go UFO spotting. He took us to a spot near his place, that was a mix of industrial and woods. As we were pulling into the area he wanted, we saw what looked at first like a fox dart across the road a few feet ahead of us. We didn't think too much of it, other than wanting to catch a better glimpse of a cute creature. He parked the car and we opened the doors, briefly looking up at the sky. Now out of the car, we set off, crossing the road and heading for a gap in the fence surrounding the area my friend wanted us to visit. Then I got the strangest feeling we were being watched and looked back across the street, only to see a rabbit or hare. I was taken aback, considering I thought the creature we saw earlier was a fox. I pointed the animal out to my friend and he was just as taken aback as I was, as he also could have sworn we'd seen a fox, not a rabbit. However, we just brushed it off, assuming it was either another animal or we'd just wrongly identified it earlier. Ducking through the fence, we walked along piles of scrap, heading towards a large hill in the distance, so we could get the perfect view of the sky. However, I just could not shake the foreboding feeling the entire time we were there. It definitely felt like we were being watched and that whatever was doing the watching had malicious intentions. I didn't voice my thoughts, however, feeling that my friend would think I was being silly, feeling so spooked with nothing around. But I kept my flashlight panning, looking every which way, while also gripping a small knife in my hand. Eventually, we made it to the top of the hill and gazed up at the stars, looking for any sign of extraterrestrials, or anything else really. It was only a few minutes later when my friend started getting anxious and telling me that he felt like we were being watched and that we were unsafe, and when I shared my same feelings, it was mutually agreed to get out of there. When we got back to the car, it's like we both had an indistinguishable need to look back up at the sky. And when we did, we saw a bunch of what looked like stars moving unnaturally. All converging on our location, none moving as if they were shooting stars or anything of the like. We started recording them and talking aloud as if they could hear us, whatever they were. We were so excited. This is what we had come here for. To get even the nearest glimpse of something not of this world. And yet neither of us could shake the tension of unease. Still not feeling safe or welcomed. Our attention was drawn away from the stars almost simultaneously, and we got in the car to leave. It was as we were trying to leave when a shape darted out into the middle of the road right before our headlights. It was another fox rabbit, yet it was completely black with no distinctive features, other than its incredibly dark red eyes. We both froze, feeling an unimaginable terror as we sat before this creature. Thankfully, my friend managed to snap out of it and reversed, speeding us the fuck out of there. It wasn't until we'd completely left that area and rejoined the main road several kilometers away that we even felt safe enough to breathe, let alone discuss what we'd just encountered. It was terrifying. It was as if evil had manifested before our eyes, ready to claim our very lives. To this day, neither of us have ever returned to that spot. Worried that if we were to ever return, we might not be so lucky as to leave with our lives. What do you believe it was? A shape-shifting entity? A shadow creature, or just two young adults with an overactive imagination, seeing monsters because they want to believe so badly? Let us know down below, and as always keep the comments section a judgment-free zone. One hot summer's day in my senior year of high school, my whole friend group and I decided to spend our lunch break on the far end of our oval. We decided to use the soccer field as the guys in our group, and a couple of the more sporty girls wanted to play a simple pickup game, while the rest of us just wanted to chill under the shade of a large tree. There were at least 11 of us as a circle, all chatting and eating, while the other 8 or 9 were playing. I was lost in my own thoughts, not being able to shake the thought that someone might be hit with the ball, as we were only a couple meters from the goal posts. And it's like my mind had singled out one friend that the ball would definitely hit. I don't even know why, or what made her stand out that day. But I didn't question it and started edging closer and closer to her. Personal space meant very little to me that day. But as I was standing very close to her and the seconds kept ticking with nothing happening, I started to think I was being silly. That it was just all in my head and I was making shit up. Yet the next thing I know, I'm having an out-of-body experience and my arm whips up to the back of her head, literally a couple centimeters away from her, when the ball smacks into the back of my hand. Literally, everyone stopped what they were doing in a stunned silence. All wondering how I did that, especially since I wasn't even facing the field, as I would have had no way to know the ball was coming. I just shrugged it off, telling them I had a feeling that it was going to happen. My friend thanked me profusely, and then we all laughed it off. And not once for the rest of our break did the ball even come close to hitting any of us again. What do you think it was? Was it a psychic prediction? Or was it the anxious mind of a teenage girl? Let us know what you think in the comments, and as always, keep it a judgment-free zone. During a full blood moon in 2022, my cousin and I went outside with spell candles, a regular candle, and a pentagram candle holder to perform rituals under the powerful energy of the night. Each candle had a specific purpose, with colors symbolizing romance, protection, and luck. The regular candle, which had only about 2 centimeters of wax, was used for communication. We began by lighting all candles on the pentagram as a protective symbol, contrary to the common misconception that pentagrams are solely tied to negative associations. After setting our intentions, we lit our spell candles and held a ritual to burn lists of our wishes. We carefully placed each burning list in the regular candle to ensure the paper would burn thoroughly. That night, as we added the paper to the candle, the flame flared up dramatically, lasting as long as it took the paper to disintegrate. We then invited any spirits or gods to communicate, including Anubis and our witch ancestors. As soon as we asked if anything was there, the regular candle's flame shot up 10 centimeters above the lip, creating a sense of awe. As the spell candles burned down, their heat became intense, so we added them to the jar, causing the flame to triple in height. Even as the wicks in the spell candles extinguished, the flame kept reigniting itself. I attempted to cover the candle with my shoe, and a loud cracking sound emerged, though the candle didn't shatter. When the flame finally went out, I tried to pick it up, but it was too hot to touch, so we decided to leave it outside and retrieve it in the morning. What do you think it was? Was it a spirit trying to communicate through the candles? Or was it the wind and overactive imaginations of paranormal enthusiasts? Let us know in the comments below, and keep it a judgment-free zone. One day, my cousin and I bought a pendulum, since we'd researched it and found out that it was one way to contact spirits. She refused to ever touch a Ouija board. Ever. And that night my mother and I were playing around with it in our house. We first tried to contact my mother's deceased father as he had passed only a couple years back and she still had questions for him. We asked the standard questions to start with: are there any spirits wishing to communicate? Are you my grandfather's name? And then safety questions to ensure we were really talking to him. Now I won't go into detail about what was discovered and said, because that was private and for my mom and him only. But she did find out some truly personal information that she had never known before, and it was really him she was talking to. We also found out that night that the spirits responded much better to me than to anyone else holding the pendulum or even asking the questions. There was more to that night, with a much more sinister encounter linked to me, but I will save that for another video. What do you think it was? Was it just the excited minds of 3 paranormal believers? Or were they all contacted by a dead relative from the afterlife? Let us know in the comments, and as always, keep it a judgment-free zone. One night when my dad and I were walking our dog through the trails along the woods, he started making jokes about my fear of spiders, as we'd encountered one with a large web blocking the path. And the next night, there seemed to be an endless number of large orb weaver spiders blocking the entire trail, one after another. There were at least 20 that night, ranging from the size of my palm to the size of my fingernail. It was a true nightmare. But it was as if something out there had done that as a test, because the next night there were absolutely none blocking the trail. What do you think happened? Did the spiders simply migrate overnight? Or was the entire event a test from the forest's unseen spirit? Let us know in the comments, and as always, keep it a judgment-free zone. Ever since my father and I started walking our dog in the woods behind our house, I've always felt as if something other was out there. We'd be followed and watched by the wildlife that lives out there, and occasionally if we listed a specific animal, like an owl or snake, they would appear a few seconds later. So, one day when I had a full day to myself, I decided to explore the woods out there, and like all horror movie cliches, I got lost out there. So out of curiosity, I decided to ask the nature spirit or whatever was out there for a sign to show me back to the paths. And out of nowhere, a large wallaby appeared as if from nowhere and turned to look right at me. Then it took a few hops, stopped and looked back at me again. Taking this as my sign, I started to follow along behind it. A few feet back, I could never seem to get close. We always seemed to keep the same distance, no matter how much I sped up or slowed down. Eventually, it led me back along the paths. I thanked it and the nature spirit profusely, and followed the path back home. And the whole time I was in there, until I was safely out, I felt like I was not only being watched, but followed. Thankfully, whatever is out there is not unkind, but I always make sure to thank it whenever I'm out there. Just in case. What do you think it was? Was it merely a normal encounter with an animal? Or did the young woman's plea for help reach the ears of a forest spirit? Let us know in the comments below, and as always, keep it a judgment-free zone.
One late summer's night, I decided to sleep in my living room on a blow-up mattress because my room was very hot. I was laying on the mattress tossing and turning, unable to sleep due to the incredible heat. When I began to hear a strange sound, like something was scuttling across the couch to the side of me. At first, I thought it was my little dog trying to jump across onto the mattress. But it wasn't until I tried to roll over to have a look that I realized I couldn't move and the noises grew louder. All of this accumulating until eventually the scurrying noises came right at me, and I felt a gust of wind hit my chest, causing me to shoot upright. Finally being able to move, gasping for air, I looked over towards the couch and saw that my little dog was asleep there the whole time. What do you think it was? Was it a case of sleep paralysis or a tired young man's mind playing with him? Or perhaps there is a more supernatural explanation? Let us know in the comments, and as always, keep it a judgment-free zone. When I was 23 years old, my father lost his battle with lung cancer. And on the night he passed, while he and my mother were at the hospital, me and my siblings were at home. It was around midnight that night, and obviously I couldn't sleep. What with all my mind could think about was my father's imminent death. To distract myself, I decided to paint some miniatures while I shut myself away in my room. And it was as I was painting away that I noticed my dressing table's mirror start to violently shake. I quickly shot up from my chair to check it out and get a closer look. I just stood before the mirror when I remembered that my dad never did like me staying up so late, so I took it as a sign that it was time for me to go to bed and prepare myself for the next day. Decision made, I headed back to my painting setup and looked back at the mirror and said aloud, "Okay Dad, I'll go to bed," then started packing away all my supplies. And it was as I was doing that the shaking finally stopped, allowing my mirror to settle. The next morning I got the call from my mother that my dad had passed earlier that morning. I will never forget that night, as even though I wasn't there with him in his final moments, he still made sure to come and give me a goodbye in his own way. What do you think it was? Was it the last bit of energy from a dying man letting his son know it's okay to rest? Or was it simply a faulty mirror? Let us know in the comments, and as always, keep it a judgment-free zone. When I was a young boy, of about 10, I was awoken seemingly at random in the middle of the night. And as I laid there, under the cover of darkness, my room started to fill with blindingly bright lights, all shining in from my window. I was terrified, so like any kid, I quickly squeezed my eyes shut as tightly as possible, while simultaneously going completely still, hoping to be ignored if I made myself as small and unobtrusive as possible. Then suddenly I was ripped from my normality, as it suddenly felt like I was floating above my bed. I was a quivering mess, way too scared to open my eyes to what was happening to and around me. All I can remember is feeling the sensation of floating. The next thing I know is that I'm waking up in bed the following morning. What do you think it was? Was it just a kid's mind playing tricks on him? Or was it a possible alien abduction? Or perhaps even something more ghostly? Let us know in the comments, and as always, keep it a judgment-free zone. One evening when I was 8 years old on a late summer's night, I was stuck awake, since it was just so hot, making it near impossible to sleep. And since I was always curious about what the world would look like at night when all others are indoors and the streets are silent, I thought this night would be the perfect night to explore my curiosity, so I decided I would look out my window. And when I did, I heard some really strange noises coming from what I could only assume was behind our tree. As I continued to gaze out into my backyard, I started to register what the sounds truly were, and it sounded like a scratching wheeze. I built up my courage and forced my eyes to look right at the tree, only to see what looked like a tall figure with the head and trunk of an elephant. And the creature was staring right at me. Yet, it looked like it was trying to hide itself behind the tree, as if it was frightened of me and what I could potentially do to it. I wasn't quite scared of it, more just shocked at what was before my very eyes. The next thing I remember was falling asleep. And for years I somehow forgot all about this encounter and what I experienced, only somehow getting the memories back when I was older. As if I wasn't ready at the time and needed to earn those memories back. Or as if a block had been broken of those memories in my mind. What do you think it was? Was it simply a tired young boy seeing things? Or an elephant-like visitor? Let us know in the comments. And as always, keep it judgment-free.
Ever since my late teens, I've had a fascination with the paranormal, and I found a kindred spirit in my older cousin. We would discuss our theories, things we've seen ourselves, and stuff we'd seen in videos. So it was only a matter of time before we got restless enough to start to go looking for the paranormal. One such exploration was done at a small cemetery. We decided to go at night, when the place was technically closed to the public. And also because we didn't want to be interrupted or ruin people's morning. Besides, nighttime always makes everything more spooky. As we were exploring and reading grave markers and paying our respects to the dead, I got distracted for some reason. I seemed to be in a state of limbo and never noticed that my cousin was wandering off. It's like my mind had gone completely blank and my body swaying to a music unheard. And that's when I heard it. This way. It simultaneously sounded like it was whispered in my ear and from a distance. I snapped out of my trance, assuming the voice came from my cousin, and started looking around for her. She was a good 10 meters, about 3 or more rows or graves, away, but I didn't think much of it. I quickly caught up to her and asked her if she'd said to me, "This way." She looked at me strangely and said she was following a feeling and genuinely thought I was still behind her that whole time. She said she hadn't said anything to me or otherwise for a couple minutes. Suffice it to say, it creeped us both out, but we were excited. Something had finally happened. So we immediately started investigating and went back to the grave it happened, then followed where I seemed to just know where the voice came from. Yet the closer we got to that undetermined location, the more foreboding and terrifying the place got. We were no longer welcomed and we could feel it. Something wanted us gone. We tried to stay, to get some form of recorded proof, and yet our fear just kept expanding. Until we just couldn't take it anymore, we needed to leave. So we started walking back the way we came and all the way to the car. But before we left the lines of the cemetery, we made sure to firmly say our goodbyes, lest we accidentally bring anything away with us. What do you think happened? Did these two young women encounter the spirits of the dead, or were they simply caught up in superstition? Let us know in the comments, and let's keep it a judgment-free zone.
My 21st birthday happened to fall upon the night of the full moon. The night started with all of us playing video games and indulging in a little alcohol. When we started to get bored and decided to go for a walk through a nearby woodland. It was especially late in the night, but thankfully we could see thanks to the moon's influence. As we were walking along the trail, we began to hear something in the bushes, and only then did we realize how truly silent our surroundings had actually gotten. We ignored it, as there was a group of us and as previously stated we had imbibed a little, but as we continued, something large started to steadily rise above the tall grass. It was massive, easily towering over all of us. I'm the tallest at 6 foot, with these large glowing blue eyes. When it started to chase us, we finally got a full view of just what this creature looked like. Its appearance loosely resembled an incredibly large dog, complete with massive, terrifyingly sharp fangs. Of course, we were terrified and booked it, taking a shortcut home, through a skate park. The entire journey home, we were sure we were being followed. We could feel its eyes burning into our backs, keeping our adrenaline pumping. Thankfully, after what felt like forever, we safely made it home. However, to this day, I have never been comfortable going into those woods at night. What do you think happened? Did the group of young men encounter an abnormally large dog, or something more otherworldly? Let us know in the comments, and as always, keep it a judgment-free zone.
When I was a young girl of 11, I had the unfortunate circumstance of being around a dying relative, specifically my grandfather. And one night as I was laying in my bed, a woman appeared at the foot of it. Startled, yet intrigued, I memorized her looks, somehow just knowing this was an important event, and she was an important woman. The next morning, I told my father about it and gave him the exact description of the woman, and he told me it was his mother. She must have been checking up on me. Now, she died young, my grandmother, so I'd never met her, nor ever even seen a picture of the woman. What do you think happened? Did the girl receive a visit from a long-dead relative, or is it simply an overactive imagination? Let us know in the comments. Please keep it a judgment-free zone. On one late night, I was texting my friend in bed when we got onto the subject of his father. His father had unfortunately passed a couple years earlier from cancer. I'd never met the man or knew much about him, as I'd met this friend after his father had passed, and it was just too painful to talk about him. But as my friend and I were texting, I started thinking about his dad, not the most savory thoughts, as from what I had heard of him, he was not always a good father. But it's as my thoughts on him continued to spiral and take root, I felt it. There was suddenly something else in my room, down at the foot of my bed and to the right, in the corner of my room. I somehow knew it was him, especially when my right leg started to ache extremely badly. See, my friend's dad had gotten into quite the nasty motorcycle accident when he was younger and consequently mangled his leg. Next thing I know, it's like I'm being pressed into the mattress and being bombarded with images. Impossible images. Images and information I could never have known. I suddenly knew the color road leathers he wore, plus the colors on his motorbike. And I'd never even seen a picture of any of this or been told, not once. And my friend verified everything that I was seeing as fact. One of the last images I was sent was of a black duffel bag, and he seemed extremely insistent on me telling my friend about it. So I did. My friend said that his dad did have a bag exactly like that, but unfortunately, his mom had moved it or thrown it out. The next day my friend went looking for that bag, even near the tree that I saw in the vision. But no luck. Unfortunately, we were never able to uncover the mysteries of that bag. What do you think it was? Was it the spirit of a close friend's family member coming to deliver a message? Or was it just wishful thinking to help a friend heal? Let us know down in the comments, and as always, keep it a judgment-free zone. On Halloween night, this year, my friend and I decided to perform a seance of a sorts. We did not have a Ouija board, so my friend tried to write one up on a piece of paper, however it didn't work out. So I took off one of my necklaces that held a small amethyst crystal embedded in my pendant to use as a pendulum. We asked basic questions with little to no responses, so we decided to give up. However, the next day weird things started to happen in my house. My TV played itself after I paused it to leave the room. My toaster put itself down twice on 2 different days, and one time when I went to use the bathroom I forgot to let my dog outside, but when I finished doing my business my dog was outside. There was no way he could have opened the door. What do you think it was? Did this pair of friends summon an annoying yet helpful spirit? Or was it simply wishful thinking? Let us know in the comments, and as always, keep it a judgment-free zone.
When I was younger, I used to have these dreams. They always seemed crazy to me because occasionally they'd come true. Prophetic, the term is. And one night I had a nasty dream where a girl in my classes bumped her head and knocked herself out cold as she took a dive for her swimming class. I tried to warn her the next morning, worried for her safety. Unfortunately, not only did she not believe me, but she and her friends used it as an excuse to further bully me. Well, later that day, lo and behold, the events of my dream came to pass, even right down to what she was wearing that day. I'll never forget the way I felt that day, when something I dreamed about actually took place in our reality. What do you think it was? Was it the prophetic dream of a gifted young boy? Or was it merely a coincidence? Let us know in the comments, and as always, keep it a judgment-free zone. On a dark and cloudy night, when I was taking my routine nightly walk, at around 10:30 p.m. As I was walking, my eyes kept straying to the sky above, almost compulsively. And that's when I saw them. Strange flashing lights above, changing colors rapidly through cycles of red, yellow, and blue. The lights looked a lot like what lightning looks like through the haze of opaque storm clouds. It was as pretty as it was terrifying. I was entranced, yet unsettled. I quickly whipped out my phone, but as this was quite a few years ago, the camera's quality was abysmal and captured nothing of what I was seeing. And due to its grainy and terrible footage, I forgot all about it, as who would believe anything they see on something that grainy and unrecognizable? There were also a small group of teenagers out on their own walk at the same time, who also bared witness to the strange lights in the sky. What do you think it was? Was it the tired mind of a young man out for his walk? Or was it something more extraterrestrial? Let us know in the comments, and as always, keep it a judgment-free zone. In the 80s, my mates and I used to take drives all the time together, during the day or night, usually the night when we weren't working. And one night we drove up to Mount Tamborine, and let me tell you, that is a terrifying drive to take during the day, let alone at night. All winding roads, and hidden turns up steep drop-offs. And this night, we seemed to have attracted the attention of something otherworldly. Coming at us from down the mountain as we were going up was what appeared to be a large black dog, with eyes as red as fresh blood. Standing at least 6 foot, and right as it was about to hit us, it vanished. What do you think it was? Was it just a stray dog going for an evening mountain run? Or perhaps a hellhound searching for the souls of the damned? Let us know in the comments, and as always, keep it a judgment-free zone.
One night when I was around 10 years old, I was struggling to fall asleep. All I could do was toss and turn, trying to get comfortable. At that point in my life, I had never really struggled with sleep, like I would do in the years to come. And it was seriously confusing me. Then, like a moth to a flame, my eyes were drawn to my bedroom window. A blindingly bright white light filled the window, and the next thing I know, I'm waking up the next morning in the exact same position that I saw the light in. And that, out of everything else, was the biggest red flag, since at that time I was known to end up on the floor or foot of my bed. I moved that much in my sleep. What do you think it was? Was it simply just a tired little girl imagining things? Or did an alien visitor help put her to sleep? Let us know in the comments, and as always, keep it a judgment-free zone.